Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Forza Italian Football Podcast. After another week of Serie A action, we are into the season's second international break now. And I'll be quite honest with you, I'm disappointed about this one. I was happy when September's came around. I'll no doubt be happy when November's comes, but this October one has come just when we were kind of getting into the swing of things, you know. I'm joined by Kevin Pogorzelski, Kev, and your beer voice back from Liverpool. How are you keeping?
Yeah, I'm good. Not too bad. Do you realise next season we only get one international break because the World Cup, the leagues are finishing mid-November.
I might take a
So
sabbatical year next season then.
they've scrapped all the two international breaks that we've had this season. You just get the one in whenever it is, October, I think.
Do you know what? I'll be honest with you. I hadn't realised that because there's been just so much going on. I've not been thinking much about the 2022 World Cup and the logistic changes that will come with it. But there you go. Thanks, Kev. More updates on that to come from you, I'm sure, just randomly throughout the season. Also joined by Vito Doria. Vito, welcome along. And I've just noticed, are you wearing glasses at the moment? I think this is the first time I've ever
Yes,
seen that.
yes, yeah. So usually I'm all right using the laptop without glasses, but I definitely need it for watching television sometimes when driving. So yeah, just sometimes the brightness of the screens, they're a bit hard to handle for me.
Oh,
Getting
fair enough.
old like the rest of us, Vito.
Yeah, it looks that way. And it's also a genetic thing for me. My father's always had glasses.
Oh, fair enough. I was the first one in my family to get glasses in about 2010. And then within 2 years, everyone followed suit. And now we all have glasses. We don't always wear them, but we all need them in certain situations. It's like everyone in the family was just denying the problem. And then I said, no, I can't see, guys. But there you go. We're not here to talk about eyesight, are we? We're here to talk about Serie A. And it's been another good round. It was always going to be from when Euan and I did the Patreon preview pod. We knew that there were a lot of good fixtures to look forward to this week. And they were as follows. Cagliari Venezia drew 1-1 in Sardinia. We had Ben Hughes at that one for FIF at the games. Salernitana beat Genoa 1-0, a huge win for the side from Campania there. And then Manuel Locatelli scored in the 86th minute, I believe it was, to win against Torino in the Derby della Mole, and then he went on and got engaged the following day. So it's been a lovely weekend for the Italy international. And then I was at Sassuolo's 2-1 loss to Inter at the Mappe on Saturday evening. And guys, I've got a train rant that I'm sorry, I'm going to have to get off my chest at some point of this pod about that. Sunday started with a shock as Bologna thumped Lazio 3-0. Verona then beat Spezia 4-0. And Sampdoria Udinese finished 3-3. And there was one of the goals of the season from Antonio Candreva. And that one, just the 3 o'clock games went a little bit wild. 6 p.m. on Sunday, I was in Florence for Fiorentina 1, Napoli 2. Really good game there. Roma beat Empoli 2-0 at the same time. And then Milan beat Atalanta 3-2 in Bergamo to round out the fixtures and send us into the international break. Just before we start talking about all of this, just another reminder, guys, that we are on patreon.com/Forza Italian Football. The community over there is growing nicely, and the patrons during the regular Serie A season are getting 3 bonus posts a week, 2 of those being podcasts, Champions League review pod, a Serie A preview pod, as well as a weekly newsletter, which goes out every Tuesday. So you can head over there and sign up for €2, €5, or €10 a month. And like I've said most weeks, I would very much encourage the €5 tier because it's probably the best value for money. And we'll very much appreciate having you over there. But let's start this week's podcast, guys, by chatting about Milan, because they are the real deal, Kev. They went away to Atalanta and were 1-0 up within a minute. And you could say that it was 2 individual errors that gave Milan their first 2 goals in Bergamo, but Milan took their chances, Atalanta didn't, and that's probably going to be what separates these 2 sides come the end of the season by however many points and places in the Serie A table.
Yeah, quite possibly. They did have to take those chances that they were gifted, shall we say, or sort of favourably handed by Atalanta. It was a real surprising result. I was with friends today, and they were, those of a betting persuasion, they were going, "Oh, you're the Serie A expert here. What's that going to end?" And I was like, "Oh, put your money on Atalanta because they're strong at home. They've just gone, they've not had a midweek travel for the Champions League because they're at home." And then I was quite shocked for them to tell me while I was driving that Milan were already 3-0 up. But you know, you can make those mistakes and not be punished by other sides lower down the league. And with Atalanta missing their own chances, it could well be what separates them, which is strange to say, really, when Atalanta are usually kind of free scoring and the side that will take those, take chances and stuff. But Milan certainly do look the real deal, and maybe not having the difficult second season under Pioli that I expected.
No, they're definitely, Milan are definitely having a good time under Pioli. But these things about Atalanta, they're just not true anymore, are they? They're not. They haven't been good at home since they got the stadium renovated. Really, I mean, funnily, the only exception to Atalanta being good at home in the new stadium was probably that famous game against Milan. Other than that, they've been pretty disappointing. They were poor at home last season. It was their away form that carried them. And then this year they lost to Fiorentina and drew with Bologna at the Jewish Stadium. So I don't know. And they've not been scoring goals this season either. I do still think, I know that they hit a little purple patch of form, but we're still just seeing early season Atalanta at the moment. But we do have to talk about Milan, Vito, because with every passing week, they just convince that little bit more. And Sandro Tonali scoring this evening obviously is just the latest example of his, I suppose, I don't want to say resurgence, but it is growth definitely in this Milan side. And it's hard to point to a team in Italy who you think are more, I suppose, complete than Milan at the moment.
The only team I could probably put in that bracket with the Rossoneri would have to be Napoli. Napoli in general, I don't think have many particular weaknesses. AC Milan, they made the necessary signings in the off season, and the way they were playing now, they look like they could challenge for the title. They're in second place, just 2 points off Napoli. And if we talk about Tonali in particular, he's really shown that he can fit in at AC Milan. He had some issues last season, especially making the jump from Brescia to the Rossoneri. And now he's showing why he's highly rated. He's a midfielder that's the complete package. And at least on social media, but also the mainstream too, he gets those comparisons with Pirlo, and then he says he's more like Gattuso. But the the way he plays Tonali is really that hybrid midfielder. He's probably got the best of both players, and I think the way he's progressing, he will eventually create his own identity, his own style of play, and being his own player. Someone who will develop a reputation in his own right, and I think his progress is great for AC Milan because you've got Kessie, who's sort of had mixed form to this season. He's had that rough start. And also, Ismail Benacer hasn't been playing a lot. So to have Tonali step in has been beneficial for Pioli and the AC Milan squad.
I cannot believe you just mentioned Sandro Tonali's name in the same breath as both Gattuso and Pirlo. People are going to kill you for that, right?
Oh, it's typical of the current age. Everybody has a dummy spit, and needless to say, I think if anyone's smart enough or has enough brain, they'd realize I'm not saying that they're of the same level. I'm just talking about characteristics and style. Unfortunately, that's the problem with social media and these keyboard warriors. Just the littlest thing, they probably just get the gist of it, and then they have all these tantrums or hissy fits. And again, this is what happens in the 21st century. Just it's better to understand the comprehension and the context.
I can see the
Context. That's
headlines
it.
now. Serie A expert says Tonali is better than Pirlo and Gattuso combined. Wow, Vito, big words. Big words that never left your mouth. But Kev, this Milan, they're clinical, they're efficient, they get the job done, they rise to the occasion when they need to for big games as well, domestically at least. And they've been hard done by in Europe too. You could argue that they've put in two pretty respectable performances, despite not having a point yet in the Champions League. Again, that wasn't a shot. I knew how it sounded as it was coming out of my mouth. It wasn't supposed to sound that way. But Kev, they are impressive, aren't they? There's no other word for this Milan team other than impressive.
Yeah, I'd argue certainly that their Champions League fixture this week was more unlucky than the one at Anfield because
They did well at Anfield though after the
they did
start.
do well at Anfield. And actually, when we're talking about the game at Anfield in context of this, that is the whole clinical in taking their chances because they really only had those two that sent them in into the lead at half time 2-1 up. And I think some of their performance tonight will be driven by them feeling hard done by midweek with the sort of refereeing decisions and things that they got. So yeah, I think it will help them through the season as much as we thought it might hinder them playing those games. But yeah, they look sound.
Kev, do you want to wish Zlatan Ibrahimovic a happy 40th? He's obviously celebrating this week. 40 years old. I'm sure you can relate to him in a lot of ways. And I know you're a big fan of his, particularly his character and humility. So would you like to send him your best wishes?
Oh, happy! Well, do you know what his birthday is? Is it Wednesday or Tuesday or?
Was it not?
Is
It's
it
already
big? Isn't
happened,
it?
has
Is
it
he
not?
now 40? Oh, okay. So I thought
Is
it
it
was
not
going to keep
today?
coming.
As in
Oh,
like
it's
Sunday.
tomorrow.
Let me check. It's October 3rd. Yeah, it was on the day that Milan beat Atalanta that he didn't,
Okay.
wasn't it?
Well, yes, of course. I wish Zlatan a very happy birthday.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sure he'll appreciate that very much. Right, guys, that'll do for Milan in part one. In part two, we'll be back to talk about the second of the games I was at, the third the FIF were at, the Fiorentina-Napoli game. We are back, and we're going to talk about Fiorentina-Napoli because, well, not because I was there, but I was there. It's coincidental, really. But this was a great game. There was a lot of things to enjoy about it. Mostly that it was a proper match where both teams had really dominant spells and both teams could have put their case forward that they wanted a little bit more consistency throughout the 90 minutes. But Fiorentina started like a house on fire. They went 1-0 up early-ish through, I always forget his first name, Lucas Martinez Quarta, and Napoli just looked like they didn't have anything. And then out of nowhere, Victor Osimhen, for the first time all night, got the better of Fiorentina's backline, won a penalty, and that just shifted the whole momentum of the game. And then Napoli never really looked overly troubled from there. There was maybe a 5-minute spell in the second half where Fiorentina were really knocking on the door. But other than that, I guess a win for Napoli, Vito, and this one was more than a deserved result.
Yeah, I think so. Despite the good start by Fiorentina, Napoli again showed the bigger gap in individual quality. I think that once Napoli got into the rhythm of things, they were the better team collectively, and I think in particular, Ozyman, he really showed how hard he is to contain for opposition defenders. The way he uses his strength for a tall guy, he's got incredible pace. And Martinez Quarta, although he got the first goal, he just struggled with Ozyman afterwards. And then Napoli, they showed that even if a guy like Ozyman or even someone like Insigne doesn't score, they got their own fair share of contributors like Amir Rahmani scoring the equaliser, and he's had a pretty good start to the season too. And then Lozano got the winner, but yeah, in general, goes to show that the Parteno pay, they've got plenty of healthy options, and like I was saying earlier, they're probably the most complete team in Serie A at the moment.
Yeah, they're definitely right up there. The Fiorentina backline was an interesting one because within 2 minutes, you could see that they had a very clear plan for dealing with Osimhen specifically, and that was to not give him an inch of space. It was mostly Nikola Milenkovic who was touch tight to him, and literally with a hand on his back the whole time that Napoli had the ball. He wasn't letting him go anywhere. But then if Milenkovic had to wander off while he was in possession or something, Quarta would come over and do the exact same thing. And I can't remember the exact time that they got the penalty. Let me just scramble around for that. But until that penalty was awarded, the two of them had everything under so much control for a good half an hour. And then there was just that one moment where Osimhen kind of dragged himself over to the left and just destroyed Quarta. And after that, Quarta just never recovered from it. But up until then, he was arguably the best player on the pitch. And it's just, I don't know. I think there's a lot of people were pointing out Fiorentina's defensive problems today, but I thought they had managed it quite well until Osimhen just kind of found his groove. Because even with the two centre backs playing the way they were, Drongowski behind as the goalkeeper was basically playing as a fifth defender because his starting position was so far out. And it's almost like Napoli were countering the close marking of Osimhen by playing balls in over the top. But Drongowski was just coming out and winning every single one of them quite easily. And in possession, Fiorentina also looked quite good. They were knocking the ball about quite nicely. There were a few heart-stopping moments when they were knocking it about in their own box, but ultimately, this is what Vincenzo Italiano wants them to do, and they did it pretty well for most of that first half. But Napoli then did just completely take over. And Osimhen, on his day, he's right up there, Kev, with the very best in Serie A, definitely. And he's well on his way to being one of the best in Europe.
Yeah, sorry, you threw me a bit with the best in Europe. Certainly one of the best in Serie
He's
A.
on his way, I said. I didn't say he was
Yeah,
there.
I think he has got the attributes to get there. He's still very young. He's still a little raw, but I think that actually kind of benefits him because it is kind of that rawness and that unexpectedness, if that's a word.
I think it is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. That will worry defenders because they've probably not seen that much of him, footage wise and things. And I think it wasn't a fortunate penalty, but it was they could have probably tried to deal with him a little better before bringing him down.
It was a definite penalty, though, wasn't it? Like
it was a definite penalty. Just that I thought they could have maybe not. It was a bit rash from the defender going in there, and then they also got slice of luck because Insigne, as he has form to do, hit a relatively poor penalty, and his follow up header. As he sort of came together with Dragowski foul to Lozano, who still put the shot away wonderfully well because he had to sort of fire it through a few bodies. And 7 from 7, what a start.
It's incredible. It's a really incredible start. But yeah, Drongowski, I felt so sorry for him because that penalty save was pretty good. And then more impressive, though, was the follow-up save because I don't know how he got up in time to then get so close to Insigne to block that header. It was excellent. And he didn't deserve to concede that goal to Lozano, to be honest. But that's just how it goes sometimes, I suppose. I did like, after the match, it must have been on DAZN or possibly, I don't know, maybe Sky, where Spalletti was being interviewed. And then obviously because Roma played at the same time, they got Mourinho on to get interviewed as well. So there was this moment where they both coincided coming through like the same feed, basically like you and Vito are now. And the interviewer was there. And then Mourinho pops up And he's like, "Oh, grande, big Spalletti, like you're great. I see you want to win every single match you play this season, yeah?" Because obviously they're 7 from 7 now. And then Spalletti was just like joking back, trying to play it all down, the superstitions, of course, saying like, "Oh, you can't say these things, blah, blah, blah." And then Mourinho says, "Oh, but I see you've got to lose your next game away from home," which is, of course, against Roma. So that's going to be a very interesting little battle. But I didn't realize they were pals. It was a very amicable exchange. And I just thought that's right up Kev's street. He'd love seeing that, Mourinho having a lovely time on television. I don't know, Kev, did you see that little video clip?
I didn't see it. It reminds me of probably a time when Mourinho was in charge of Manchester United, and some of the keyboard warriors who Vito referenced earlier were going apoplectic with rage because the Manchester United Brazilian contingent and the Manchester City Brazilian contingent had dared to go out to a restaurant together, and they couldn't possibly be friends. And so it always makes me smile. I quite like that sort of thing because we all know, well and good, you obviously there are people you dislike that you meet in whatever profession and industry it is, but the majority of the time, most people are quite pleasant, and there is some common ground there. Two coaches that have gone through the jobs they've had under the pressure that they've had probably find common ground. When they sit somewhere out of sight from the media post game, and probably do have a laugh and a joke about what's going on.
Yeah, well, there was always the thing, wasn't there, that I think Alex Ferguson was the one who publicized it a little bit more than most, but they just go into his office for a glass of wine after the match and things like that, which is quite nice. But on a very different note, that there was, unfortunately, I've not seen too many reports of it, which is again depressing, but a little bit of racism going on at the Artemio Franchi. It started with Victor Osimhen during the game. He was really getting under the skin of the Fiorentina fans just by, well, existing really. And he was his usual self, protesting decisions with the referee, putting himself about. He was fouled at one point, and every time he did something that wasn't kick the ball effectively, every time he spoke to someone or fell, there were a lot of jeers and whistles and the usual. But then through that broke a couple of the, I suppose you could say, expected monkey chants. I should stress they did seem minimal and as though they were coming from a handful of people, but they were repeated on a number of occasions throughout the game. Then afterwards, Kalidou Koulibaly was summoned to do the pitch side interview as he left the pitch. And the way they locate it at the Artemio Franchi is that it's just right beside the tunnel, which is just beneath the Curva Fiesole. And obviously, that's quite an unfortunate location if you're a visiting player, particularly if one of your teammates has just been racially abused during a match that you were playing in. And then Koulibaly, as he was leaving, well, first as he was walking towards it, I heard or thought I heard some monkey chants coming from the Curva, which was mostly empty by this point. But then as Koulibaly was leaving, he clearly heard something as well because he stopped as he was stepping down into the tunnel and then came back out of it and stood confronted from maybe 50, 30 meters away, the Fiorentina fans. And he seemed to point out one individual in particular. So hopefully they will be able to identify this individual, much like happened at the Allianz Stadium when Mike Maignan was racially abused by a moronic Juventus fan, and that will get sorted. But having fans back has been bloody amazing, but I forgot some of the stuff that comes with it. And I do remember it must have been the 1920 season. At the beginning, there was like a 3-week spell where we talked about racist abuse every single week on this podcast, and it seemed that every game I went to for a 3-week period, it was happening. Let's just hope that doesn't come back and people can continue to stamp this out and stop being fucking idiots, basically. That'll do for part 2. In part 3, we're going to talk about Sassuolo-Inter. Right. Okay, the other game I was at this weekend, the first of the two games I was at this weekend, came at the Mappe, where champions Inter traveled to Emilia-Romagna, Reggio Emilia, both of those places, Kev. Tell me which is the region, which is the city.
Sorry, I was muted. I wasn't searching for answers.
Yeah.
Reggio Emilia is the region.
No. Reggio
Oh
Emilia is
God,
the
no.
city. Emilia-Romagna is the region.
Emilia. Of course, Emilia Romagna is the region because that's the Bologna region,
There
my
you go.
favourite Bologna
There you go.
region.
It's the region in which I live too, Kev, as you well know.
Yes.
Anyway, Sassuolo went 1-0 up through a Domenico Berardi penalty. Of course they did, and of course he was the one that scored it. He loves playing against Inter. But then, just let me get my notes from this out. In the 57th minute, Simone Inzaghi made 4 substitutes at the same time. So Bastoni, Dumfries, Çalhanoğlu, and Correa were all dragged. And I only felt bad for Bastoni. The rest of them deserved to be dragged earlier, to be honest with you. Di Marco, Darmian, Vidal, and Dzeko came on in their place, and everything changed. Dzeko scored within 30 seconds. Inter went on to win it through a Lautaro Martinez penalty. The game wasn't without its controversy, obviously. But Vito, statement win from the Nerazzurri, especially considering how badly they started this one.
Well, when I saw what was going on early on, it looked like Sassuolo, would do the usual thing and just really give the Nerazzurri a bad time. It seems that after that first season or two, after they would get destroyed game after game, they've become a bogey team for the Nerazzurri, and it seemed to be going down that path, especially with Jeremy Berger, with some of his dribbling. If I remember correctly, he earned the penalty, and he showed that he could be returning to some of his old form. But the game got turned around by the Nerazzurri, especially uh, with the substitutions, and then unfortunately Andrea Consigli probably had one of his worst games for Sassuolo. If you look back, he should have done better with the first goal. He just watched that cross from the left come in, and he should have at least tried to punch away the cross or intercept the cross or even try to block off Dzeko's path, but Dzeko got the equaliser. And then you got to really question the brain fade he had to concede the penalty like he did. That was mind-boggling. And I'll just add to that, I had a look at the La Gazzetta dello Sport ratings. Consigli got a 5.5 out of 10. I thought that was generous. I thought he deserved a 4, maybe less, but very generous.
A 4?
Yeah, he was terrible. Well, for how he handled the goals, that was pretty bad, especially considering, that he's usually a lot better than that.
Particularly against
it's a bit.
Inter, right?
Mm.
He always steps it up against Inter, as Inter fans well know. He usually becomes peak Gianluigi Buffon when he plays against them. But yeah, he was disappointing. However, I'm confused, to be honest with you, about the penalty decision, because yes, it's a foul and yes, it's a penalty. However, on the stroke of halftime, there was an almost identical incident with Gregoire Defrel and Samir Handanovic, where Defrel was put through by, Stefan Defrey. I don't know what he was doing. He played the worst pass back to a goalkeeper that I've seen for a long time. And Defrel got in, knocked it around Handanovic, who turned quite strategically the same way that Defrel was going. So he was making it look like he was getting out of the way, but he wasn't really getting out of the way. And then he did a little jump thing to emphasize further that he was getting out of the way. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because he brought down Defrel. And I think Defrel was a little bit silly to run where he ran, but I still think that Handanovic has got to be penalised for that foul. And if not, you can't give a penalty when Consigli does the exact same thing just 10 yards closer to the goal line. I couldn't wrap my head around it. And halftime came while this was all kicking off, and there was a lot of complaints, and I think someone was given a yellow card during it. It was a little bit mad. I couldn't quite work it out myself, but let's not talk too much about that. We tend to avoid refereeing controversies, and I think we should. But that one didn't really sit well with me. I was very confused by it, and I've watched both incidents again. I just can't work out why one was a penalty and one wasn't even a free kick. It's just odd, really odd. But anyway, Kev, Inter came back. They got their win, and they're just not as bad as we kind of expected them to be.
No, absolutely. Just grinding away. It would be interesting, if they're still where they are now, the last month of the season or the last 2 months, and when they're going to need to do a bit more than just kind of grind stuff away, what condition they'll be in. But yeah, away they go.
I love that you're progressively moving further away from the microphone and not increasing the volume at which you're speaking.
My microphone's attached to my head.
Oh, well, then you're just speaking progressively quieter. Then that's what's going on.
It's been a long weekend. Too many spirits were consumed.
Right. It sounds like you're walking away from the microphone from the beginning to the end of your sentences. So.
Right.
Anyway, we've got to talk about Joaquin Correa because he was bad, really, really bad. And Lazio fans will be screaming, "We told you so," but not because he's a bad player, but because in 7 weeks of the season, I don't think he hasn't been at Inter for the 7 rounds, has he? But for however long he's been at Inter, he's shown us already that he's the same player that he was under Inzaghi at Lazio, and that he can have a brilliant impact, and he can also do absolutely nothing. And Inter fans, Vito, will just want them to find a little bit of middle ground there, because at the moment he's maddening.
It seems that after that impact he had in the Hellas Verona game, that it's like he's just done enough for the season type of thing. He hasn't capitalized on it or built upon his form. And that's probably one of the issues with this Inter team, is that you got guys like Correa and Hakan Çalhanoğlu. They'll put in a couple good games, but they don't have the consistency to sort of make sure that Inter are fighting near the top. It's also a shame because those two players, they're capable of doing magical things on their day. So, if we just stick to Correa, it's great if he can just actually get his scoring numbers up for stars, and even if he provides a few more assists, it's good because he adds something different to the Nerazzurri attack. You've got someone like Martinez who's strong physically. He's a direct runner. He's quick. Whereas Correa, he's the more mercurial talent of the two. So although he doesn't have the same work ethic or prolificacy that Lautaro has, he'll add his own share of unpredictability. And when he's switched on, it's that kind of player that can really, give defenses headaches. And that's what Inzaghi needs to see more from Correa, instead of just walking around the pitch and waddling like a duck.
Kev, the other striker they've got is Edin Dzeko, obviously, and he just keeps showing why Inter were so keen to bring him in, because he's getting important goals for them at the moment. And if Inzaghi can manage his minutes and his legs this season, he could be a real difference maker between a potential second place finish and a first place finish.
Yeah, absolutely. He sort of showed how clinical he was, coming straight into the flow of the game. Converted that wonderful pass by Perisic, which was better than Barella's for Martinez the week before. And I think the problem when they signed Dzeko
is he's old.
That he's old, but it's such an obvious downgrade on Lukaku. And that comparison, and that probably, that does him a disservice, because because it's that direct comparison, really, because the Inter fans were still mourning the loss of Big Rom, and in comes someone a good nearly sort of 7 or 8 years older than him, very much less mobile, but has scored goals almost everywhere he's been, and arguably now requires a little bit more of those goals to be kind of laid on a plate for him. But he'll not only score plenty of goals, but I fully expect him to pop up with a few crucial goals during the course of the season for him.
Just not in the Champions League, obviously, because Inter are cursed in European football, as we well know. But funnily, I seem to remember Dzeko's best Roma performances over the last 2 years certainly came in the Champions League. But who knows? The curse that surrounds Inter is greater and defeats everything else, clearly. Okay, part 4, I think. We're going to talk about the rest of the Serie A games. It's a shame to talk about the Derby della Mole so late in the podcast, but we couldn't justify putting it ahead of any of those 3 games that we went in a little bit deeper on. But Kev, Manuel Locatelli, he scored another big goal. He got a big goal, I believe it was against Sampdoria the week before when you did the report on that one. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, he did. He scored the third to extend Juventus's lead to 3-1. And I said at the time last week how he has probably already become their most influential midfielder.
He's their best midfielder. Hands down, he's their best midfielder.
And almost in a kind of hybrid 6-8 position, so that sort of kind of shielding and scurrying across.
Do you know what? I'm happy you said this because during the Euros, one of my mates who has actually just left Parma in the last few days, sometimes listens to the pod, so hello, Pete. He's a Liverpool fan, and I was talking about Locatelli. It was the day that he scored 2 against Switzerland. I think, was it the Switzerland game he scored 2 against? I think it was. Yes, Vito's nodding, so that means it's correct. Perfect. Thank you. And I said that it's weird to see him score 2 goals in a game. And my mate was like, well, what kind of player is he? And I was like, well, he does this. And he goes, so he's a 6. And I was like, nah, because he does this. And he's like, so he's an 8. And he's like, nah, he's not a 10, but he's kind of both of those, but neither. And a bit more. And yeah, Kev, thank you for justifying exactly what I was saying in the summer. But continue.
Yeah. No, where was my train of thought? But yeah, so he is. He's fulfilling so many roles. Although actually, I think that's an issue because then that indicates that they can't rely on one man for all of these things. And actually, for the 1 week that I wasn't covering Juventus and writing an analysis piece, it would have been entirely around Locatelli's growing importance despite his very short time at the club. I only managed to catch the highlights of this, but actually for everything else that I've seen of Juve this year, and considering how well Torino has started the season, this looked like the first game that Juventus, if not dominated, but controlled for large portions of the match, and which is kind of always a case in the derby between these two.
Vito, Bologna beat Lazio 3-0, and I was travelling to Florence during this. What on earth happened here? Lazio won the derby last week, and then they lost 3-0 to Bologna, who've been stinking for a lot of this season.
I don't think even the most optimistic of Felsinei supporters would have seen this one coming. When I saw the lineup at the start, I was stunned because Sinisa Mihajlovic is probably one of the staunchest critics of a 3-man defence, and he went for a 3-4-2-1, and the plan was to sit back and defend, but what eventually happened was a rather balanced performance on their part. They defended well in numbers, and they were dangerous on the counter-attack, whereas Lazio were limited to going sideways and backwards. Teat had a great game, and he got the second goal. He played well in defence. Sumaro was excellent as well. Dominguez is a ball-winning midfielder. He had a solid game. And Aaron Hickey, the Scottish lad, he had his best performance for Bologna so far, and he got a deserved third goal. Reina could have done better on the shot, but I think he deserved that for the performance he had put in. Musa Barrow, I think we're running out of superlatives. We praised him a lot on this pod, and the goal he scored to open a scoring was stupendous. Just a great bending strike. And the eccentric Marko Arnautovic, he didn't score, but he's a character, and on the field, he's got a good work ethic too. I think he held up the ball very well, linked up well with teammates, put in a few tricks, including a few step overs. So a lot to like about Bologna in this particular game. But I think for Lazio, Milinkovic-Savic, he lost his temper a bit, and Murici up front was disappointing. Without Immobile, they really missed their talisman, Lazio.
I was following this one on the train, and I saw the goals going in, but it wasn't until the end of the game that I noticed that Lazio had a man sent off. So I thought, okay, that it's just one of those. They got a man sent off and it all collapsed. But it was 3-0 when Acerbi got sent off. He missed the last 15 minutes, but it was 3-0 in the 68th. So bizarre. Yeah. Really, really bizarre one, that, particularly at the time. And I know Euan said on the podcast, it must have been the preview podcast, that Lazio's win over Roma will be a lot less impressive if they go on to lose in comic fashion against Bologna. And here we are a week later. Euan's unfortunately a little bit sick, otherwise he would have been here with us tonight. So I'm sure, do you know what, it's probably best that he's not. He'd be insufferable, wouldn't he, after getting that little prediction right? He wouldn't stop talking about it. Anyway, on to the next one. Kev, Roma beat Empoli 2-0. Lorenzo Pellegrini signed a new contract in midweek and he celebrated it with a goal. Henrik Mkhitaryan scored the other. But Mourinho and Roma, it's going nicely again. Forget the derby. Don't worry about it. All is well. And Lorenzo Pellegrini is the best midfielder to have ever played football.
Yeah, well, firstly on Pellegrini, I remember last year saying that I wasn't actually sure what he did, for all his minutes.
Me too.
But this year he's got. I had some statistics last week about his assists and goals, but he's throwing those around like they're free, and obviously it's a nice narrative when you sign a new contract. If it means he's going to sort of stick around at Roma, if he continues to perform like this, it will depend more on the success that Mourinho brings. And like we said last week, the derby is the derby. I think it's often long forgotten by the coaches because it is such a game that can go either way. And the Roma fans may have been disappointed last Sunday, but I'm sure they're smiling again this Sunday, given the fortunes of the two sides.
Yes, Kev. Yes, you're slowly coming over. You're slowly coming over to this side, even if you don't realize it, Kev. You've dipped your toe in, and you're now saying that the derby. Oh yes, I love to hear it. I love to hear it. I'm winning you over, even though you don't.
I'm not sure not sure who I can like on the Roma team.
Chris Smalling is very likable.
Ex-United.
Yeah, okay. Oh, so you mean for those reasons you can't like them because they played for...
Well, I still have fond affections for Pepe Reina and Lucas Leiva, so I think
So you need a Liverpool connection, is what you're saying?
No, I think it makes me lean more favourably towards Lazio, I think. But you'll have to give me the Roma one.
Well, no, there are two, but they're currently at Liverpool. Two of your best players were given to you by Roma. Alisson and Mo Salah.
One of them was given to us. After doing that, they did drive a relatively hard bargain with Alisson.
They gave you their player, didn't they? Two gifts. And now look, without those players, you wouldn't have won the Champions League and the Premier League and all sorts. So there you go. Start liking Roma, you ungrateful clown. Let's move on, shall we? Vito, your Sampdoria drew 3-3 with Udinese. And look, Quagliarella scored, but I don't care because Antonio Candreva, oh my God, what a goal that was. I think it was Patrick Kendrick who compared it to the goal he scored for Inter against Lecce a couple of seasons ago. I think this one might be better.
Yes, it was, and yeah, it was a fabulous strike on his part, and I thought that this would have been the decisive goal. That would have been the winner. Speaking of comparisons, I actually made a even wilder comparison on Twitter. There, one of the games at the 1986 World Cup, Brazil versus Northern Ireland, the right back Josima on his debut, or Josima, scored a similar goal like that, just that sort of position on the ground and trajectory. So some of these comparisons between goals are pretty crazy. But Candreva in general has been probably Sampdoria's best player. His work ethic and his skills, they've been on show. So it looks like he's starting a bit of a career resurgence. So I'm happy for him, and I think he's doing well in particular. As for the result itself, a bit disappointed we didn't hold on for the 3 points, and I think although we're great going forward, I think defensively we just look like a bunch of amateurs. The defense at times look like a bunch of training cones, and it's a shame because at least on the eye, this Sump team looks pleasing to watch under the Versa.
While the Candreva goal was lovely.
Oh no! What are you gonna do?
No. Just as I was watching the goal, and I was thinking, do we miss lots more goals like this that we don't rate as highly? Because so just bear with me. You're viewing the goal because the camera is the side that the player striking the ball has the back to you, so you see the sort of trajectory of the ball, and it's a really nice kind of angle to view the goal from. And then I'm thinking, so take if you watched Tammy Abraham, he hit the bar from the other side, so the far side of the pitch, because you're viewing it from that end. And I was thinking of the comparison would be the Benjamin Pavard goal for France, the World Cup, because there was then on the replays you saw, although the live footage, it obviously was a good goal, but I don't know, it just always feels like the ones that I see from the players back live always make that sort of involuntary that's a good goal. But actually, and then we miss all the others, the ones where there isn't a camera the other side, we don't see a replay of it. But lovely goal. I wasn't dissing the goal. I was just thinking, are they elevated ever so slightly because we get that beautiful angle from the camera position?
Possibly. I remember being at the San Siro, no, the Miazza, because it was Inter who were playing at home, and that's how it works. A couple of years back when Parma went there in their first Serie A season, and Federico Di Marco, who was on loan from Inter at the time, scored a winner very late on. And oh my God, it was an astonishing goal. And it was one of those, he hit it with the outside of his foot from miles away and it looped. And if it was on the other side, it would have looked so much better because you would have been able to see it live with that whip on it, but unfortunately not. And it was recognized as being a good goal, but not quite as good as it should have been. I went back and watched that in midweek, incidentally. I'm not sure why, but it just came to my mind. So it's fresh in my head at the moment. But there you go. Michael Essien against Arsenal as well for Chelsea is one of those in the category of the camera did it favours because it was perfectly in line with the camera, the way it looped out and then whipped back in at the last second. Although I suppose Roberto Carlos's free kick against France goes against that argument. This is something we need to have a chat about off air when we're not recording. So let's just swiftly shift the conversation.
No, just very quickly, because I think
it's never quick when you speak, Kev.
Carlos's has the same issue as the Pavard one, whereas there was an angle directly behind him.
Yeah, but not the live one.
No, not the live. Come on, that was me being quick.
That was it, but you didn't make a point. Anyway, let's continue. Vito, Spezia lost 4-0 against Verona, having played so well last week against Milan. Simone Bastoni got sent off again, though. The damage was done. It was already 4-0 by that point. Giovanni Simeone scored quite remarkably, and what's more remarkable is that Gianluca Caprari also scored. What's going on at Verona now? They're good.
Yeah, it's staggering because under Juric, they had that clear style of play and identity, but they weren't overly prolific. Then Di Francesco, well, I knew it was a mistake to hire him in the first place, but since Tudor's come in, they've been absolutely rejuvenated. And yeah, it was just incredible that the Giallo Blue, they're playing very well. And Caprari in particular has actually been a good acquisition for them. So he played well in their first win of the season, and he was involved in 2 goals in this game. So yeah, perhaps maybe he's someone the Giallo Blue can try and purchase on a permanent basis.
Spezia need to put Ivan Provedel back in the team. I don't know why he's not playing, to be honest, because he was excellent last year. And Zoet, well, I don't know what he's doing. By the looks of it, this weekend he's not doing anything because Verona had 6 shots, 4 on target, and scored 4 goals. Put Provedel back in. Excellent goalkeeper. My God. Sorry, if you saw my face drop, if you're watching this on YouTube, it's because I just saw that they only had 4 shots on target and they scored 4 goals. And again, Provedel was on the bench, but there you go. Spezia, curiously, only had 7 substitutes named, which isn't ideal for a top flight side. Kev, Salernitana beat Genoa 1-0. I know Vito will be happy about this, so I'll let you talk about it instead. A big win for Salernitana. They really did need that one.
Yeah, well, it sort of keeps them, well, gets them up off the bottom, jumping over Cagliari. Genoa didn't look great, sadly. Don't stop smiling, Vito. But, you know, Vito needs to remember that they're only a point behind Samp still. So neither Genoese sides are looking great at the bottom there. But yeah, it looks, because obviously Venezia got we'll move on to that. They got a point, and it just allows them to not fall too far away because they were struggling at the start of the season, weren't they?
They were struggling at the start of the season, and Vito, as Kev said, we will go on to Cagliari Venezia because Keita Balde put the Isolani ahead very early on. Well, not very early, but in the first half of the first half, so it's quite early. But Gianluca Buzio scored considerably later in the 92nd to seal a point for the Venetians.
Another valuable point for the Lagunari, and Buzio, he continues his emergence. So happy that he was the one that got the goal, but not good for Cagliari at all. I mean, sitting on the bottom of the table with just 3 points. Mazzari's return is not looking too impressive at this stage, but I think Venezia, it's good to see that they're actually trying to put up some sort of a fight, especially after beginning so poorly.
It is. I don't know why I called them the Venetians. I didn't fancy saying Arancio Nero Verde at that time, and I couldn't think of any of their other nicknames. So I just went for it. They're new in Serie A. I'm still coming to terms with all of the names that go with them. But anyway, that'll do, guys. We're into the season's second international break now. So if you do want to keep up with what Italy gets up to over the international break, you're going to have to go over to patreon.com/Forza Italian Football because, well, we never did international podcasts during the pre-Patreon days. So in terms of the free stuff, we're going to continue not doing them. But if you're signed up to Patreon, we will have an Italy review pod after every match that they play. It'll be me and someone else. Will change depending on availability. And Kev, I'd imagine you won't be doing any because you hate international football and you burn your television if it so much as dares to come on your screen outside of an international competition, right?
I just don't watch the very pointless or often pointless
semi-final, mate.
Games.
Trophy on the line.
A semi-final of what?
Nations League.
What is that this week? Is it?
I think it is, yeah.
That's a pointless.
Yeah, Italy are playing Spain in the Nations League semi-final. So, Nations League final, Italy are going to win a trophy by the time we speak again. Another one. Well, I don't know why you're laughing, Vito. Italy win everything now. And I'm not just talking about in football. If Italy compete in something, they win it. That's just the way 2021 is. Football, done. 100 meters, done. Eurovision, done. European Championships of like women's volleyball, done. Everything. Italy win. That's what happens. So, If you want a celebratory podcast about the Azzurri, another one, I should say, patreon.com/Forza Italian Football.com, €2, €5, and €10 tiers available. If you want podcasts, you're going to have to pay for the €5 tier. The €2 tier, you'll get one at the beginning of the month and whatever else. I can't really remember right now, but head over and check it out. It's all listed on the site. Kev, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Vito, thank you very much.
No worries.
And goodbye.